Yeah. So, I mean, I was going to talk about that because, you know, in your second race, you had second race sort of internationally in the single. There's you out, you know, quick time again, sort of 6:40s, conditions not as fast as Poznan, but you know, you're miles in front of, is it Fournier Rodriguez? I think second in that race.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember who was Nico. I think might have been third that time.
Yeah, it might have been the Swiss Sculler possibly, but so because one of the things, you know, and I was talking to the guys that I row with who, you know, followed your career with a lot of interest, and one of the things they wanted to know was how you explain to yourself the performance at the regattas, because we'll go on to look at 2018 races, but where you're in, you know, in stunning form, and then the World Championships, where you don't have the results that sort of form would suggest, and how you've kind of explained that to yourself.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if I had the answers, then I guess it wouldn't, like, ideally always going to the World Champs wanting to win, and very disappointing in 2017 and 18. I think 2017 was, I actually did amazingly well just to make the final, because I'd been out of the boat for about 6 weeks before jumping on the plane to Sarasota. So yeah, wasn't in form then at all. And I think obviously went into 2018 World Champs with much higher hopes, and came back to New Zealand and trained probably harder than ever between the World Cups and World Champs. And I think, like, without like realizing it, or trying to put too much emphasis on the World Cups, I think that particularly the third World Cup in 2018, just again that was sort of my race of the season, and I guess spent myself sort of mentally, physically and emotionally sort of to get myself through that race. And again, and probably actually had more pressure on that race than I did at the World Champs.
I think, that's the race you've got. Is that Ollie Zeidler back there, or
yeah, I think Ollie and
or
I
know was way back, wasn't he?
Yeah, I know Ollie was second, and I think Cynic was third in that one. But yeah, again, like I think without really knowing it at the time, but put so much into that race, and then sometimes the body just says that's enough. And despite coming back to New Zealand and trying to train even harder, I just wasn't able to do what I was even in training, what I was capable of doing in the build up to those World Cup races. So,
oh really?
And I think, like, possibly overdoing the speed work and different things in the lead up to it. But and like I say, it's sort of, if I knew all the answers, then you wouldn't be asking me this question, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I find it very frustrating, because it was you know, how you must feel, because as a commentator, it was so exciting to see the way that you were racing. It was so markedly different, and then it was kind of, I think, you know, from 2017, I know you had the injury that you were getting over there, but certainly 2018 you had a fantastic race in Linz, where, you know, you were Zeidler and Tim Olanaska were racing out in front, and you were kind of down for quite a lot of that race, and then you know, you had this fantastic profile, came through and won. And I just imagined, this guy's gonna kill everybody at the World Championships.
I guess, like, also the way that I race is, well, I guess it's hard on everyone, but coming down the course at 40 strokes a minute, and there's a lot of I guess it's not always pretty, and I guess, like, I do hurt my body a lot to do those performances, and I suppose there's only so many times a year that I'm capable of doing that, although I'd want to be able to go out there and do it every single time. But I guess on top of that, we're sort of racing in New Zealand sort of all of our summer and then go over to Europe and race. So it's almost all year round for those sort of years, like 17, 18, 19, trying to be in pretty close to peak form and having to sort of do that and rate that high over and over again. And I think eventually it just sort of takes its toll. And I think that's also like partly going back into the double. I think, I think it's sort of, it's also very hard on your body, but possibly in a slightly different way as being in the single.
What way round is the double? Do you have a preference for where you and Chris sit in that crew?
So Chris strokes and I'm bow seat. I think pre 2013 I was like in the men's quad in London, and then 2013 I was in stroke seat of the quad and double. So used to prefer stroke seat, and I think from then on, like I've always preferred bow seat and just felt a little bit more comfortable and almost feel like I have a little bit more influence from bow seat and how the boat's going.
You and Chris have got unfinished business, I guess, from the Olympics in 2016, because I remember, going into that campaign, I think you had a great result in Poznan before you went to Rio, but Rio, you were back in the B final, and I think there were issues with that performance, weren't there?
Yeah. So there's a few injury issues and stuff there as well. So that's another reason for wanting to be in the double with Chris as well, as we do both feel like we have that unfinished business and we know what a fast combination we are. And off our training measures and stuff, we were going a lot faster probably this year as opposed to we were in 2015 and 16. So it's really exciting to be back in the double with Chris, but because of the whole situation we're in, selections are all now null and void, and it's back to not necessarily back to square one, but we've got to retrial again and prove ourselves to be reselected in the double for 2021.
So will that involve a series of singles races again and racing in doubles with different partners, or is there some of that work that's already been done? You don't have to go through that.
It'll more just be double seat racing, I imagine. We're not 100% sure of what it's going to look like exactly at this stage, but I imagine it'll be quite similar to last year, where we did a lot of seat racing with the whole squad and sort of worked out who the top four of us were, and then did more seat racing with the top four. So I think that's probably there's not going to be so much of that. We'll probably just redo sort of like the last stage of it. So although not 100% sure how it's going to work at this stage, but I imagine it'll be just refinalizing what's going on.
And how do you see the doubles internationally? Two new crews really last year came up with gold and silver in the world.
I think it's like it. I think they're all extremely competitive. Like, you just will look at the margins across all the events at World Champs. So, I think all of the doubles out there are fast, and on a given day or regatta, any crew could step up and perform extremely well. And I guess you see that with the Chinese and the Irish doubles at World Champs last year. Both like first time crews medaling at World Champs, I think. So you don't know what's going to happen necessarily. You've just got to respect all of your opposition and know that they're all going to be fast. So I think also Cynic's gone into the double next year as well. So there's a lot of unknowns, and not only with how fast the opposition is going to be, but I guess like for us, we don't even know at this stage if we'll get to race any World Cups before Tokyo next year. It may be going straight from New Zealand into it, which I guess has its pros and cons. Like I guess you could come in as the dark horse and fly under the radar, but so could someone else. So I guess until we actually get to Tokyo and what ever that's going to look like, we don't really know at this stage. So
yes, something I just wanted to ask you, which I meant to ask you when you were talking about the singles, is technically, if you're at that high rate of striking, where's your focus in order, not to make the boat bounce and stop? How do you do that to rate that high and keep the stern running smooth like that?
I think it's just about being really relaxed and loose, like in the shoulders at the catch, so you can sort of pick up the boat without disturbing it and without being too heavy on it. So yeah, just being really quick and relaxed, and then also around the finish, not trying to do too much. So just thinking of the stroke being sort of legs and body, and I think you can almost see in that race in Poznan, is that my arms are doing nothing. They're essentially taking the blades out of the water. So I guess it's like really utilizing that middle powerful part of the stroke and sort of not doing too much around either end to really upset it.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly phenomenal to look at the way, what do you think in terms of looking at rowing generally, that, the Australians, 4 was, rating at above 40, although they came unstuck last year at the Worlds. Do you think rating generally, I mean, is that something you might be aware of in the New Zealand squad, that the ratings are rising in general? And what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think everyone's like, it's just getting more and more competitive every year, and I guess people are just trying to adapt to go faster, and that's possibly one of the few areas left to kind of to really go after it. But I guess you're always going to get different styles, and I know there are a lot of crews rating particularly high at the moment. So I think part of that comes from like technical proficiency as well. And I've also had races like this year at the World Champs where I've probably been rating higher than ever, but not going faster for it. So rating is not necessarily the key. It's almost like resorting to rating because you're desperate to sort of try and move the boat. So you have to be really technically proficient within that. But yeah, it is, if you're already maxed out in everything you're doing physically, I guess one of the few ways to go faster is to rate higher.
Yeah. Let's maybe, people might not be so familiar with how you actually came into the sport of rowing, but you came from a bit of a rowing family background.
Yeah, so mum and dad both rowed. Dad actually went to the World Champs in Harswinkle in 1985 in the lightweight single. And mum and dad both won like numerous national titles in New Zealand. So they met rowing and have a very much a rowing background. And then my older brother and I actually rode horses when we were younger. So that was our sport, and that was sort of the path I wanted to take. And then it was only because Carl, my younger brother, had started rowing that I thought, I'll go and give it a go. I thought that it'd make me fit and I'd get abs, and I'd have abs for life and look really good. And I guess also I'm like quite competitive with Carl as well. So him getting fitter and stronger than me, I wasn't too keen on. So even though he is a lot physically stronger than I am, but I guess he didn't really find that out until we started rowing. But I guess that was sort of the I guess what initiated it, is Carl taking up the sport. Mum was coaching him. We actually also always used to drive to the pony club with the horse float on the back and drive over the river River where we row on, and Mum would always say, "Oh, look at that water, wouldn't it be good to go for a row now?" And we'd just roll our eyes at her. So I guess always used to sort of wind mum and dad up, saying, "Oh, I'm never going to row," and quite adamant about that. So it was only the Carl sort of starting that initiated it for me. and then I think like I guess like I enjoyed the feeling of being out on the water and rowing, but I guess also I'm quite competitive as well. So once I started it, I wanted to get a lot better and had some good results. So I really liked with rowing that the harder you train, the more work you put in, the better your results. And in equestrian, you're relying on an animal which you can't always communicate with as well as you'd like to. So, and I guess like we didn't have a lot of money growing up either. We really struggled to have the horses and to do as much as we did do. So it's a very expensive sport. So I guess that was always a struggle, that we couldn't afford the best horses or to be going to all the shows and doing as much as I wanted to do with that. So well, here's a sport that I can excel at by training harder as opposed to spending more money or that sort of thing. So and then sort of had my first sort of taste of success, and then that really spurred me on to train harder and harder and do some crazy things to try and get good at rowing.
And you rowed in the under-23s with your brother Carl.
Yeah. So I rowed with Joseph Sullivan in the double in 2009, and then with Carl in the double in 2010.
And did you win that year in 2009?
Yeah, we did. That was my first international race. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
a nice way to start.
So, so I'm just wondering, talking about your mum or your dad being big influences on you, do you see your personality as sort of equally matched between your mum or dad, or are you more like one or the other?
I don't know. I like to think that have little bits of both, but I guess in terms of rowing and probably fairly similar to Dad, but I guess like I like to think that I had picked up good qualities from both of them.
Yeah, people look at personalities as, you know, an introversion preference or an extroversion preference. Where would you put yourself on that scale?
Yeah, I'd say definitely an introvert.
Really?
I'd say possibly an introvert, that like an introverted extrovert. So like I'd like to be an extrovert, but definitely tend to be more of an introvert. But it depends on the what I'm doing and who I'm around as well. So I think like I can adapt a little bit.
Yeah. So how does that get you? Because I know in New Zealand there must have been a lot of publicity when you had those series of races to be the New Zealand single against Mahe Drysdale, and him being such larger than life personality in a lot of ways in New Zealand. How did that affect you?
Yeah, I guess like I'm like never the biggest fan of the media. I sort of like to keep my head down and do the work, and sort of not like I guess I like to let my rowing do the talking, or do my talking on the water. Like I don't want to go chasing after the media and making a big story out of something. Like I prefer to just get on and do it. So I guess it's part of what comes with it, but I wouldn't say like I love the media side of it, but it's also got its benefits as well. So I guess like it's definitely helped my like profile as well, having those sort of having that media attention and stuff around the single and the selection and stuff. But I guess definitely pros and cons, I'd say.
Are you a bit of a media star in New Zealand, or is it not like that? I mean, rowers sort of, don't have that much of a sort of profile.
I guess like probably very low key. Like I think like possibly compared to other countries, like rowing is very highly regarded in New Zealand, and being one of the most successful Olympic sports here in New Zealand, like I'd say the rowers definitely have some profile and like does get a fair amount of coverage, as opposed to a lot of European countries. I suppose they're probably a little bit underrepresented in the media. So I'd say we're lucky in terms of that here, is that the media do really like to follow rowing and get behind the team. So
yeah.